I still remember that summer afternoon when everything changed for my mother and me. The sun was warm, the air smelled like fresh-cut grass, and for once she was smiling. My mom, a gentle woman in her late 50s, had spent most of her life in quiet pain after an accident left her partially disabled. The metal braces on her legs helped her walk again, slowly but proudly. She called them her wings, because after years in a wheelchair, those braces gave her freedom. When we moved into our new neighborhood, we thought we'd finally found peace. The houses were neat, the lawns were trimmed, and the HOA promised a kind and respectful community. But what we didn't know was that behind those perfect hedges lived a woman who thought she owned everyone, Karen, the head of the HOA. From day one, she made it clear she didn't like us. Maybe it was because we weren't part of her circle. Maybe it was because my mom wore her braces proudly and didn't fit her idea of picture-perfect residence. It started with small things. Notes on our door about the color of our mailbox. Warnings about our flower pots being off-theme. I brushed it off at first, but my mother, she took it personally. She said, "Son, people like that, they need to feel powerful because they're empty inside." I thought she was right, but even her calm words couldn't prepare us for what happened next. One morning, Mom decided to plant roses by the sidewalk. She'd saved up for months, wanting the front of our house to look as beautiful as she felt inside. I was at work that day, so she went out alone, her leg braces clicking softly as she knelt in the dirt, smiling. That's when Karen showed up. Witnesses said she stormed down the street like she owned it, shouting something about unauthorized modifications. My mother tried to explain that she'd gotten verbal approval from another HOA member, but Karen wasn't having it. She yanked the flowers out of the ground, snapping their stems. My mom tried to stop her, but Karen pushed her away. And then, what she did next broke something in me forever. In a fit of rage, she reached down and grabbed my mother's metal leg brace. Before anyone could react, she pulled it so hard that the latch broke and the brace came off. My mother fell hard onto the sidewalk, crying in pain. Karen stood over her, still yelling about rules, not even realizing what she'd done. When I got the call from a neighbor, I rushed home like a madman, seeing my mom sitting there, trembling, her brace twisted on the pavement. It made my blood boil, but what broke me most was the look in her eyes. Not fear, not pain, but disappointment. "I thought she'd understand," my mother whispered, her voice breaking. "I thought people were kinder than this." That night, as I helped her into bed, I swore I'd make things right. I didn't know how, but one thing was certain. Karen had just declared war on the wrong family. If you were in my place, seeing your mother treated like that, what would you do? Would you stay silent or fight back? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe, because what happened next will leave you speechless. The next morning, I woke up to silence. My mother was still asleep, her legs wrapped gently in bandages. The doctor said she'd be fine, but her leg brace was damaged beyond repair. It would take weeks to replace, and insurance wouldn't cover the rush order. I sat there staring at the broken metal lying on the table, thinking about how something meant to help her walk had been turned into a symbol of cruelty. Karen hadn't even apologized. Instead, she'd sent us a letter from the HOA saying Mom had violated neighborhood regulations by altering property without written approval. My hands shook as I read it. She attacked my mother and still thought she was the victim. I couldn't believe it. When I went outside, a few neighbors were watching from their porches. Some looked away. Others whispered. Only Mrs. Parker, an older woman who lived across the street, came over. "Son," she said softly, "I saw what happened yesterday. I tried to step in, but Karen threatened to fine me too." That was when I realized how much power Karen really had over this neighborhood. People feared her fines, her influence, her control. But I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. I took photos of the broken brace, the bruises on Mum's legs, and the letter she'd sent. I documented everything. Then I started digging. I went online, searching through HOA bylaws, meeting minutes, and even financial records. What I found shocked me. Karen had been charging residents special maintenance fees for years, fees that never appeared in the official HOA budget. Thousands of dollars were unaccounted for. She was running the HOA like her personal business, hiding behind fake paperwork. That night, as I told my mother what I'd discovered, her eyes lit up for the first time since the attack. "You're saying she's been stealing?" she asked. "Yes," I said. And I can prove it. I started gathering more evidence, talking to quiet neighbors, and soon people began to trust me. One by one they shared their stories, Karen threatening them, fining them for made-up violations, even yelling at kids for playing too loud. It wasn't just us. She'd been tormenting everyone. And yet no one had stood up to her. Until now, I decided to record every encounter. The next week I attended the HOA meeting, pretending to be calm. Karen sat at the head of the table, wearing her usual smug smile. "Oh, look who decided to join us," she sneered. "I hope you've learned to follow the rules." I wanted to shout, but instead I smiled back. "Actually," I said, "I came to discuss your rules." I pulled out my phone and started reading from the HOA bylaws. According to Section 3.2, no board member may impose or collect unauthorized fees without majority approval. Karen froze. "I don't know what you're implying," she said, her voice shaky. "You know exactly what I'm implying," I replied. "I've got receipts." The room fell silent. One by one, neighbors looked up, their fear slowly turning into anger. For the first time, Karen didn't look powerful. She looked cornered. I told everyone how she'd assaulted my mother, how she'd broken her brace, how she'd used fear to control the neighborhood. And then I played the recording of a conversation I'd had with Mrs. Parker, who'd caught Karen bragging about making an example out of us. Karen's face turned red. She tried to snatch the phone from me, but people stopped her. "You hurt that woman," one neighbor shouted. "We saw it," another yelled. The meeting turned chaotic, but I didn't care. The truth was finally out. Karen stormed out of the room, yelling that we'd regret this. But it was too late. I'd already sent everything to the county housing board and to the local news station. By the time I got home that night, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, hope. Mom was sitting on the porch, the evening breeze gently brushing her hair. "Did you do it?" she asked. "Yes, Mom," I said, smiling. "I did." She nodded slowly, tears welling up in her eyes. "Then maybe," she whispered, "it's time people see who she really is." Within days, everything started to change. The story of what Karen did to my mother spread faster than I expected. At first, it was just whispers in the neighborhood, people talking on their porches, text messages flying through the community chat group. But then a local news reporter called me. They'd seen the pictures I'd sent, the documents and the video from the HOA meeting. They wanted to interview my mother. I wasn't sure she was ready, but when I asked her, she surprised me. She smiled gently and said, "If this helps even one person who's being bullied like me, then yes, I'll speak." Watching her sit there in front of the camera, fragile yet strong, made me realize how powerful her courage really was. She told them everything. How Karen humiliated her, how she tore off her leg brace, how people were too afraid to speak up. The next morning, the story aired on TV. It was everywhere. HOA president accused of assault and fraud. Karen's face was on every local channel. The community that once feared her now turned against her. People started coming to our house, bringing flowers, food, and words of support. "We're so sorry we didn't say something sooner," they said. My mother, kind as ever, just smiled and said, "It's never too late to do the right thing." But Karen wasn't ready to give up. A few days later, she came to our house, her face pale and angry. "You ruined me," she shouted from the sidewalk. "You think this is over?" I stepped outside, holding my phone just in case. "It's over, Karen," I said calmly. "You did this to yourself." She glared at me, trembling. "You'll regret this," she hissed. I always win. But this time she didn't, because the next week the county investigators finished their audit. They found over $30,000 in missing funds under her name. She'd been pocketing HOA money for years, creating fake maintenance projects, and finding people who refused to pay her under the table. When the sheriff's car pulled up outside her house, the entire neighborhood gathered on their lawns. It was surreal watching her being led away in handcuffs, shouting about how it was all a misunderstanding. My mum watched quietly from her wheelchair, holding my hand. "Justice," she whispered softly. "Real justice." A few days later, the new HOA board held another meeting without Karen. This time, people voted to dissolve her old rules, the ones she'd used to control everyone. They even voted to pay for a new set of leg braces for my mom, the best kind available. When the company delivered them, I saw tears in her eyes as she stood up slowly and took her first steps again. "They feel lighter," she said, smiling. "Maybe because my heart finally is." That night we sat on the porch together, the street quiet and peaceful for once. The air smelled of roses, the same ones she had tried to plant months ago. I had replanted them while she was resting, every flower a reminder that kindness can bloom even after cruelty. I looked at her and said, "Mom, I think you won." She chuckled softly. "No, son. We didn't win. The truth did." For the first time I realized she was right. It wasn't about revenge. It was about dignity. It was about showing that no matter how cruel people can be, compassion will always rise stronger. If you were standing there, watching the person who hurt your family finally face justice, what would you say to them? Tell me in the comments and make sure to like this video and subscribe, because the ending of this story will touch your heart in ways you won't expect. A few weeks passed and life slowly began to feel normal again. The neighborhood that once felt like a battlefield had turned into a place of peace. People smiled when they walked by our house. Children played on the sidewalks again, and for the first time since we moved in, my mother felt safe. She began tending to her roses every morning, humming softly as the sun rose behind her. The scars on her legs were still healing, but her spirit was stronger than ever. One evening, while I was helping her water the plants, she said something that stayed with me forever. She said, "Son, when people break you, they think they've taken something away from you. But what they don't know is that pain teaches you how to build yourself back better than before." I looked at her and nodded because she was right. Her strength had rebuilt not just herself, but the whole community. The people who used to fear Karen were now united. They started helping each other, sharing tools, fixing fences together, organizing community dinners. It was as if the neighborhood had been reborn out of kindness. One afternoon we received a letter from the city. It said that my mother was being nominated for a Community Courage Award for standing up against injustice. When I told her, she laughed softly and said, "I never wanted an award, I just wanted to plant my roses." But on the night of the ceremony, when she went up on stage in her new braces, standing tall and proud, I saw tears in almost everyone's eyes. The same. People who once stayed silent were now clapping for her, cheering for the woman who had inspired them all. She gave a short speech, but it was one that none of us would ever forget. She said, "I don't hate the woman who hurt me, because hate keeps you trapped just like fear did. But I hope she learns that power doesn't come from control, it comes from kindness. And I hope every person here remembers that one act of courage can change a whole street, a whole town, a whole world." That night, when we got home, she sat on the porch looking at the stars. She turned to me and said, "You know, I think those roses finally found their place." I smiled and said, "Yeah, Mom, they did." But deep down I knew she wasn't just talking about the flowers. She was talking about herself, about how even after everything she had faced, she had bloomed stronger than ever. A few days later, Karen's house went up for sale. She never returned to the neighborhood. Some said she moved to another state. Others said she was trying to start over. But for us, her absence wasn't something we celebrated. It was a reminder that no matter how much someone tries to control others, they can never escape the truth. The last thing my mother said about her was simple. "I hope she finds peace, because people who do cruel things are usually the ones who need healing the most." That's who my mom was. Even after everything, she still chose compassion. And that's why I'll always call her the bravest person I know. As for the roses, they grew fast, brighter than any flowers on the street. People would stop to admire them, and Mum would always say, "These aren't just roses. They're reminders that beauty can grow even after pain." Every petal, every stem told our story, a story of strength, love, and the power of standing up for what's right. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video and subscribe, because every week we share true emotional stories that remind us what kindness and courage really mean. And tell me in the comments if you believe forgiveness makes us stronger, or if some people simply don't deserve it.